Happy Vlogmas day 12, you guys. Yesterday I uploaded the worst books I've read in 2022. So today I thought it would be really fun to film the 22 best books that I've read in 2022. That was a mouthful. I have a stack of books right next to me. These are in no particular order. I honestly think all of these books are amazing, so I couldn't possibly rank them. All of these are definitely top book recommendations from me. But the first book on my list is The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Almas. I know that so many of you guys have to be rolling your eyes because so many of you don't like this book. A lot of you guys found it super boring. I was the complete opposite. I finished this in one sitting. I absolutely loved it. It is enemies to lovers, but not really, because the two main characters quickly realize that they have feelings for one another. So it's a very brief enemies to lovers. It takes place in Spain and the scenery is just absolutely beautiful. The main character, Catalina, needs a date for her sister's wedding. She doesn't want to show up to the wedding alone because her family is going to talk crap, as families do. So her colleague and her arch enemy, Aaron, offers to go to Spain with her. With that action alone, Catalina should have known that Aaron actually had feelings for her, but that's besides the point. He volunteers to be her fake date and their whole fake relationship starts. It's also fake dating. I don't think I mentioned that. So it's enemies to lovers and fake dating, which are probably two of my favorite tropes. It was a little bit of a slow burn, and normally I don't like slow burners, but I really enjoyed this book and it's definitely one of the best books that I've read this year. Another fake dating book is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. This one follows Stella and Michael. Stella actually has autism and she struggles with intimacy, so she hires an escort by the name of Michael to help her be more comfortable and actually enjoy intimacy. Throughout that process, they actually fall for one another, and it's such a wholesome book. I was smiling throughout reading this book. I absolutely love Stella. I wanted to give her a hug. I loved Michael. I gave it 5 stars, so you know that I loved it because I don't give out 5 stars very often, and this book just has my entire heart. I did read the other books in the series because this is the first book in a 3-book series. I didn't really enjoy them as much, but this one will forever have my heart. It's dual POV, friends to lovers, kind of has a little bit of fake dating as well, so you honestly can't go wrong with this book. Absolutely loved it. The next 3 books are books that are all part of a series. It's actually my first fantasy series that I've ever read. You probably already know. It is the ACOTAR series. So the first book, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, has my entire heart. Absolutely fell in love with this book. A lot of people don't like this book because it's really slow, but since I was new to the fantasy genre, I appreciated how slow it was because it really took the time to build up the world. I really got to know the characters in the story as well. So I didn't mind the fact that it was a slow burner. I haven't been able to find a fantasy series that comes close to ACOTAR. I read the Folk of Air series and absolutely hated it. Those books are actually featured in the video that I uploaded yesterday, worst books I've read in 2022. But this series, you guys, is absolutely amazing. A Court of Mist and Fury. This is probably my favorite book in the series. And then the third book, A Court of Wings and Ruin, is absolutely amazing as well. These are pretty thick books. They just keep getting thicker as the series goes on, which can be a little scary, but honestly, they're so good that you don't even notice how thick they are because you will devour these books so quickly. So if you're new to the fantasy genre, this is the series for you. Absolutely recommend it. Follows a bunch of different characters that you're going to learn to love and hate. These books are just going to throw you in for such a loop. Absolutely love it. The scenery, the character development, everything is 10 out of 10. I love when my YouTube gets ads in the background. This next book, The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa, I read at the beginning of 2022. If I remember correctly, I think I read it in January or February, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It follows 2 characters, Carolina Santos and Max Hartley. Max is the brother of the man that broke up with Lena on her wedding day. Lena blames Max for what happened on her wedding day, and years pass, they meet again, and they are forced to work together, and through the process of them working together, they fall in love, but they have to figure out if they can give their relationship an honest chance since she was obviously supposed to marry Max's brother. I love the diversity in this book. I loved the comedy, the romance, the spice. It was just 10 out of 10 for me, and I highly recommend this book. And how cute is this cover? So adorable. This next book made me cry and it broke my heart. That is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I absolutely love this book. book. Obviously, I love all of these books. I don't know why I'm wasting time saying that I love each book individually. Obviously, I love all of these books if they're being featured in this video, but this one in particular just tugged at my heart. I literally cried from the very beginning till the very end. I just thought it was a beautifully written book. It's definitely one of my favorite Colleen Hoover books. This one follows Kenna and Ledger. Kenna is fresh out of prison. She spent 5 years in prison for a car accident that she was involved in that resulted in her boyfriend's death. She has a daughter by the boyfriend that died. So the first thing that she wants to do upon being released is obviously go look for her daughter and reunite with her so they can become a family. But obviously she has to prove herself because her boyfriend's family are actually the ones who are raising her daughter, and they really don't want anything to do with Kenna. Ledger is the only one in the town really who is willing to give Kenna a chance. I just think that this book tackled grief and death beautifully. It just shows how different people grieve and how it's really hard to forgive someone even if you want to. It talks a lot about grief, it talks a lot about death, about second chances. Definitely read this book, you guys. Next book is Mexican Gothic by Silva Moreno Garcia. This was my first Gothic horror read and I absolutely loved it. I'm actually a fan of the Gothic horror genre now because of this book. It takes place in the 1950s, which I loved. It has the right amount of like horror vibes, but it also has a little bit of romance. And in this book, the main character travels to visit her cousin who has recently been married, but the family hasn't seen her again since the wedding. And the new husband keeps making excuses as to why his wife hasn't been able to spend time with their family. She actually sent a letter to her family saying that she's sick and that she needs help. Naomi goes to visit her cousin to try to figure out what's wrong, to see if she's actually sick. And if she's sick, she obviously wants to get help for her cousin and bring her back home. So she goes to visit her cousin and her husband in their new mansion, and she discovers that the family that her cousin married to actually has a lot of dark secrets. The mansion itself is very creepy. There's things that are happening that are making the main character question her sanity and everyone around her sanity. The town is just giving her really weird vibes. If you want like a spooky but not scary book, definitely check out this book. The next book is actually a recent read, and that is Christmas as Silver Falls by Jenny Hale. This is a holiday romance novel, so if you want to pick up this book, pick it up soon because we're in the middle of the holiday season. I mean, you could read it after the holidays are over, but I don't think it's going to do the book justice. Like, you want to read this next to your Christmas tree, drinking a nice cup of hot cocoa with marshmallows to really get the Christmassy vibes. It follows Scarlett and Charlie. It is a grumpy sunshine. In this book, Scarlett is trying to save her family's inn. Well, not really. She has come to terms with the fact that she needs to sell her family's inn, but she wants to sell it to the right person who is going to preserve the inn's essence, if you will. And Scarlett believes the best person to sell the inn to would be Charlie. However, Charlie is a major grump. He doesn't want to deal with Scarlett. He doesn't want to deal with anyone in the small town. Throughout the book, Scarlett just wants to figure out what's wrong with Charlie and wants to bring the Christmas joy, the Christmas spirit into his life. It made me feel like I was drinking a big cup of hot cocoa, and I loved every second. The next book on this list is The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This is such a cute little romantic comedy. It's fake dating / forced proximity. There's actually a bunch of different tropes in this book. It actually made me laugh out loud. Like, the jokes were actually pretty funny and the dialogue between the two characters were really funny. It follows Olive, who is a twin, and she has really bad luck versus her twin sister always has good luck. Except on her own wedding day, her twin sister and the entire wedding party get food poisoning except for Olivia and the groom's brother. And since the bride and groom are sick, they can't go on their honeymoon that they already paid for. So they tell Olive and Ethan to go on their vacation for them, and they do because the honeymoon is in Hawaii, and who says no to a free trip to Hawaii? But the only problem is that Olive and Ethan can't stand each other. I read this in one sitting. If you're looking for a good romantic comedy, definitely read this book. And also the vibes are just immaculate. The setting in Hawaii is absolutely stunning. You really do feel like you are in Hawaii, which I loved. Highly recommend if you somehow haven't read it yet. Then we have Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. This is actually a domestic thriller. It follows a married couple who appear to have it all. This book definitely made my anxiety go through the roof. I would definitely recommend for you guys to check out the triggers before you read this book. But if you're looking for a good psychological thriller, definitely read this book. The main character, Grace, is being psychologically abused by her husband, and unfortunately her husband is a successful defense lawyer. He actually defends battered women, and so everyone thinks that they have a perfect marriage when in reality they don't. Again, he mentally abuses the heck out of Grace, and it's actually really sad in certain parts, but if you're into psychological thrillers, this is definitely a must read, and I highly recommend. You're probably going to want to take breaks while you read that book because it does get intense in certain parts. The next book is The Deal by L. Kennedy. This is the first book in the Off-Campus series. I will have to say that this is my favorite book in the entire Off-Campus series. I wouldn't really recommend the other books. I mean, they're good, but this by far is the best one. So if you don't want to read an entire series, just read this one and you'll be fine. You won't miss out on anything else. This one is dual POV, fake dating, which I love. It follows Hannah and Garrett. It's a hockey/college romance love story. Garrett is a very popular hockey player in his school. He basically asks Hannah for a favor to help him pass one of their classes together. At first, Hannah doesn't really want to because she has enough on her plate as a college student, but then she agrees because Garrett tells her that if she tutors him, he'll get her crush to notice her. But throughout their whole deal, as the title, Garrett falls for Hannah and now has to try to prove himself to Hannah and to show her that he's actually the right guy for her, not her crush. Tackles SA, so definitely keep that in mind. If that's a trigger for you, maybe skip out on this book. The characters just go through so much growth in this story that I absolutely loved it. Garrett is probably one of my all-time favorite book boyfriends of all time because the way he takes care of Hannah is just elite. One thing to know is that this book is very spicy, so if spicy is not your thing, maybe don't pick up this book, but if you do love a good amount of spice, then this is the book for you. Next up, we have another Colleen Hoover book, and that is Ugly Love. This one follows Tate and Miles. They start off a friends with benefits relationship, which, as we all know, never works out. Someone always catches feelings, and that's what happens in this book. They actually both end up catching feelings for one another, but they both have a lot of growing up to do before they can even attempt a serious relationship. It's actually a very sad book because you learn a lot about Miles and you really get to understand why he's Mr. Grump and why he doesn't believe that he's capable of a serious relationship. Loved the love story between Miles and Tate. Loved those two characters. This was actually one of the very first books that I've read by Colleen Hoover, and I absolutely fell in love with her writing in this one. It's super addicting. It's not that long, so you'll probably be able to finish this book in one sitting, and I highly recommend. I feel like a lot of people love this book, and for very good reason. Then we have The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I'm not even going to bother explaining what this book is about because you guys, I've literally talked about this book nonstop on my channel. Absolutely loved it. It's fake dating. If you haven't read The Love Hypothesis, what are you doing? How are you going to end off 2022 without reading this book? Like, go read it. Then we have Beach Read. This is another book that I literally have not shut up about. It was actually my first Emily Henry book. Was it my first Emily Henry book? No, I think Book Lovers was my first Emily Henry book, and I actually really enjoyed that book, but it did not make this list. Beach Read, however, I gave 5 stars to. January and Gus Forever Have My Heart. It's kind of enemies to lovers, but their enemy relationship only lasts for a little bit. It doesn't really last that long. January and Gus are basically two authors who are both experiencing writer's block at the same time, so they decide to swap genres. January will write literary fiction and Gus will write the next great romance novel. Throughout the process of them swapping their book genres, they spend a lot of time together and realize that they share a mutual attraction for one another. It deals with grief, it deals with moving on, second chances, trust issues, learning to trust not only others but learning to trust yourself as well. Absolutely loved the dialogue between January and Gus. Gus Forever Has My Heart. Another book that I'm not going to waste too much time on explaining because I've talked about this book so many times. It's Verity by Colleen Hoover. This is one of my all-time favorite Colleen Hoover books. I think it is my favorite Colleen Hoover book. I gave it 5 stars. stars. It's very different from her other books. This one is a little bit more creepy, a little bit more dark. Like, it's obviously romance, but with a dark twist. I read it during a 24-hour reading vlog, and I literally was fighting my sleep trying to finish this book because I loved it so much. It kept me at the edge of my seat. I just wanted to keep reading to find out how it was going to end, and then the ending threw me in for such a loop. It was such a like mindfuck moment, excuse my language, but it truly was. At this point, if you haven't read that book, I don't know what you're doing with life. Like, sorry, I truly don't know. I've recommended that book in so many of my videos. Just go read it. Last but certainly not least, we have Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This is a coming of age story that actually takes place in the 1950s and the 1960s as well, if I remember correctly. It basically follows a little girl who was abandoned by her entire family, and she is forced to live on her own and to basically raise herself in the marshlands. It's just a beautifully written story. It has a little bit of romance. It also has a little bit of a murder mystery, since throughout the book you're trying to figure out who murdered a character named Chase, and the ending has such a twist. I love when books have twists that I can't predict or that I can't see coming, and the ending in this book took me by complete surprise. I cried a lot as I was reading this book. I got angry as I was reading this book. I haven't watched the movie though, and the movie's on Netflix. I don't know what I'm waiting for, because a lot of you guys have told me that the movie is actually really good. I just need to sit down and watch it. So hopefully I will watch it before the year is over, but I highly recommend this book if you haven't read it yet. Let me know in the comments below, what is the best book you've read this year? I would love to know. Now, if you made it this far into the video, then you know what time it is. It is chocolate of the day time. Today is a vlogmas day 12, so right here. Cute. That's adorable. This one is Coffee Feather. I don't taste the coffee. Okay, now I do. I tasted the coffee in that last bite. Not bad. Actually pretty good. I give it like a 5 out of 10. And that's pretty much it for today's video. Really hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I would love to have you a part of my channel. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.